edition of MITech TV. Waiting for Matt Roush to join us. Hopefully that'll be soon. But instead, I have Michelle Krebs from Cox Automotive with us today. And I pinged Michelle a couple of weeks ago when I saw something come over my transom talking about all these repossession that are going on with vehicles because people can't make their payments. And the writer speculated that would help drive down costs. But I think you disagree with that, right, Michelle?
Totally disagree. Yes, we have seen delinquencies rise, and yes, we have seen repos rise some, but it is still such a tiny percentage of the market. And so it's really not going to have an impact. And in fact, we don't think, while used vehicle sales have dipped a little bit, they're still pretty high, and we anticipate they will continue to be that way for the next few years because there's just not a lot of inventory of used vehicles. When you don't sell new vehicles, you don't have used vehicles to sell. So we anticipate there will be shortages of used vehicles in the next few years.
Well, of course, you have the United Auto Workers strike going on too, which I'm sure will impact inventories. Typically, what they carry 60 to 90 days of inventory out there in the real world, or is that number high or low?
It's kind of obsolete now. It used to, back in the good old days, it was 60 was the ideal and considered normal. We just hit that industry wide. And I would say in terms of the three automakers, they're in different positions. General Motors, their Chevrolet division and their Cadillac divisions have on the lower side, below average inventory, but Stellantis has a tremendous amount of inventory, which tells you they could last a strike. Ford's kind of in between there. They have a few vehicles like the Bronco, like the Ranger, where there's a strike at the plant that are in short supply, but they're not in horrible shape yet.
Okay. Mr. Matt has now joined us, and we were just talking about vehicle pricing and availability. Join us and throw in a question here, Matt. What would you like to say?
I've been a little bit curious about this. They haven't really gone after the biggest sellers until recently. Do you think this is going to be one of those things where they just continue to turn the screws as time goes on, or at what point is it counterproductive at some point? What do you think?
Well, it's going to, that's been the whole UAW's new strategy, is keep everybody guessing. And I think that's been really savvy. You're right, until last Thursday night, I think it was, when they went on strike against the Ford Kentucky truck plant, which is a really important plant to Ford. They had hit plants that there was plenty of inventory, and things like the Jeep Toledo plant, there's a lot of inventory of Jeeps, so that's not a problem. But that may well be. And they told it, the union said on Friday that a couple weeks ago, that they almost went on strike against GM's Arlington, Texas plant. That would have really hurt because they make the big SUVs and lots of profit in those, and they are in very short supply. So we'll see. He keeps us guessing.
Yeah, well, he is savvy in those terms. With everything kind of up in the air right now, what is going on with overall pricing? You were saying earlier that it's still fairly stable, or not?
Oh, sales have been remarkably strong this year. We have upped our forecast a couple times. We now think the sales will come in at 15.4 for the year. It was under 14 this past year. We're just shocked that the consumer is still willing to spend on new vehicles, especially because prices are high, but interest rates keep going up, and that really boosts the monthly payment. The average monthly payment is well over $700 right now. So,
wow, that's a lot of cheese. I know I was looking at used cars, and then the associated finance rate with that is like 10 or 11% or something like that.
Right, and even on a new vehicle, it's over 9 now. Now, used varies widely because completely depends on your credit score. So, some people are paying way more than 10% if they're even in the market. A lot of people have decided can't afford the math on this, so they just are out of the market. But it's been so surprising how strong sales have been, and we aren't seeing a slowdown yet. We are seeing a little bit more in the way of incentives, and pricing's kind of stabilized. We've seen some price cuts on the EV side. But it's been a surprising market.
Yeah, because the used car prices were completely rising like absolute crazy during the pandemic. What have been the trends lately in used car prices?
Well, they're still strong. They've come off those peaks, but they're still, I think the average listing price is still like $27,000. So they're not they're not ever going to be, we aren't going to see 2019 again on the new side or the used side. So,
Oh my goodness.
and as I was saying to Mike, that, there's going to be an inventory shortage of used vehicles because we just didn't sell we didn't sell 17 million of new ones during COVID and during the chip shortage. And people aren't leasing as the leasing deals that used to be out there. So fewer people are leasing, and those used to be a big source of vehicles to buy on the used car market. So we'll see pretty strong used vehicle pricing for the next few years because of inventory shortages.
And in the EV world, what are EV prices are astronomical. I mean, I've seen new EVs going for $60,000 or $70,000.
Well, the average is actually plummeted. Probably a year or so, maybe a year and a half ago, the average EV cost $66,000. It's now down to 50. That's not, the gap is not that big now compared to new vehicles, which is at like 48. So a lot of that has to do with big price cuts, especially by Tesla. And also we're seeing incentives on EVs are twice what they are on gas-powered vehicles. Sales are still strong, but there's we are seeing exponential growth in production of EVs. So, and everybody's in the game now. It's not just Tesla. So that's changed the dynamic of the EV market. And now the automakers have to start selling to more mainstream buyers of EVs, and some of us are a little hesitant.
And in terms of EV sales, it's an interesting dynamic, I think, because there's been an exponential increase in production, but are most of these smaller cars the kind of which that the domestic automakers don't make anymore in terms of internal combustion models, or are they the larger SUV type vehicles?
In terms of, you mean new cars, not EV?
Yeah, what kind of EVs are they selling now? Where is production going?
Oh, well, they're all over the map. I mean, Tesla's the dominant player. Its market share is going down, but it's still the dominant player. So things like the Model Y and the Model 3. Also the Chevy Bolt is back in the market after the big recall of its batteries, so that has brought that average down. And then we're seeing Hyundai, Kia come in with some models that aren't quite as expensive as some of the top end ones. So there's just a lot more variety in terms of the style of vehicles and the price of those EVs.
We've had some people from Toyota on recently on the show here talking about how they seem to be banking big on hybrids rather than pure EVs. What's your opinion of that strategy?
It's turned out to be a pretty smart strategy at the moment. About a third of Toyota sales this last month, I think, were hybrids. And by the way, they make a lot of money on hybrids because they can get a premium price. They're always in short supply. So it's turned out to be a good strategy for the moment. Now they are going to shift a lot more towards EVs. There's a lot of news coming out of Japan about a solid state battery that will be here in 2027. A lot of people think that could be a big game changer. Toyota's had more problems just with production and inventory and selling cars, but they seem to have that under control, and their production is really increasing of all vehicles.
And of course, they're not impacted by a UAW strike down there, are they?
No, in fact, I think theoretically they could benefit. Yeah. Bill Ford this morning said, we should be focused on Toyota and Honda and Tesla and the Chinese automakers as Ford workers.
The other thing that I'm reading a lot about, but I think it's still kind of out in the future, is hydrogen-based vehicles. But it seems like it's going to be more like commercial trucks, big semis, that sort of thing. I don't see a lot of private vehicles fueling up with hydrogen, but I could be wrong. But what do you think?
Well, Toyota's been selling the Mirai, which is a fuel cell vehicle out in California, for quite a few years. It's on its second or third generation, obviously really small numbers. But yes, you're right. It's mostly aimed at the big trucks. Mercedes is doing one. Obviously, Tesla's got a semi Nikola, which is a startup, and Toyota. I don't know if I said that, but Toyota also is. Toyota's a big proponent of hydrogen.
Interesting. In terms of where we go from here, what do you think is the future of where do you think EVs are going to go? Is there a plateau? Are they completely going to take over? I know some automakers are more or less banking on that strategy that they're going to completely take over.
Well, let's just say this. I think internal combustion engines will be around for a long time. There's a lot of regulation that's, that California wants to eliminate all new sales of EVs by 2035. But, there is the affordability issue, there's the infrastructure issue. So a lot of obstacles to overcome.
Indeed, there are. I think the infrastructure is the biggest one. Even on EVs, it's still a big issue.
It's a big
I
issue.
live in a big complex of 600 units, and there's 3 chargers here for the EVs. It's like they'll have to have fist fights over there to plug in, I guess. So, it's you got to do something, right? I mean, the climate change or whatever you want to call, everybody calls it something different. I don't want to get into the politics of the naming, but certainly we need to do something to cut down on CO2 emissions, and EVs are one way to do it, right?
And I think that's the word, that's true across the globe. That's why it's not going to stop, even though we have these bumps in the road of inventory buildup and, sales stalling some. But that is the direction we're going in. I think it's just a question of timing.
Matthew? Okay. In terms of your role, tell us a little bit about Cox Automotive. We're gonna let you do the commercial part.
Okay. Well, Cox Automotive, it's an interesting company. I started in the newspaper business, by the way. We still have newspapers.
Oh, right.
The Dayton Daily News and of course the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And the founder had first bought the Dayton Daily News and then also was governor of the state of Ohio, ran for president and lost to Warren Harding. So interesting. But they started the automotive industry with Mannheim Auto Auctions, which are wholesale auctions to dealers where they exchange vehicles or vehicles coming off fleet. And then, of course, we have Auto Trader and Kelley Blue Book, which are car shopping websites. And then we have a host of software companies that do dealer management systems for dealerships, that kind of thing. So we have a lot of data about what's happening to cars along the way because we touch a huge percentage of them in some way or another. And
where can one find all that data? Is there one central location or is it scattered about?
No, it's coxautoinc.com. And then we have a newsroom and press releases on that.